Hello students, today we are going to study the fall of Troy part 2. The beautiful city of Troy was surrounded by the Greeks and a terrible battle took place for 10 long years. Let's see the page number 72. Part 2. At last, Troy was taken, not by force but by a trick. It was the cunning Odysseus who thought of a plan to obtain the victory. In the 10th year, the city was captured by the Greeks, not by war, but by a clever trick. Odysseus, a Greek king and warrior, devised a cunning plan to take over Troy. Let us build a great wooden horse, he said, big enough to hold men inside it, and let some of our best fighters hide in the horse. Then let us burn our tents and pretend to sail away in our ships. But instead of sailing away, we will return in the night. When the Trojans are asleep, we will attack the city and burn and kill. In this paragraph, we come to know Odysseus' cunning plan. He decided to build a huge wooden horse. Some of the best fighters would sit inside the horse. All the ships and warriors would sail away from the Troy. At night, they would return and attack the city. The next paragraph, the Greek leaders decided to follow the advice of the wise Odysseus. So great horse of wood was made by a skillful engineer, and the greatest heroes, Menelaus, Odysseus himself and others entered it. The last man to go in being the architect himself, who knew the secret of opening and shutting the entrance. That evening, the Greeks burned their tents and sailed away in their ships, but they did not go very far. Only one man was left behind to persuade the Trojans to drag the horse into their city. The Greek leaders followed this plan. An engineer made a huge horse skillfully. Great warriors entered inside the horse along with engineer because he knew the secret of opening and shutting the entrance. According to plan, Greeks sailed away their ships. They did not go very far, and only one man stayed back to convince Trojans. Let's see the next paragraph. Next day, the Trojans woke up, expecting to go out and fight as they had done for the past 10 years. What delight and surprise they felt at the sight they saw. On the seashore outside the walls, it seemed that the long siege was over at last. The tents had been burned, the shore was deserted, the Greek ships had all gone. Next day, Trojans were happy to see empty battlefield. They were surprised on seeing deserted seashore. They thought that the war was over. It's peace at last, they cried, and opened wide their gates and came out in large numbers on the plain, glad to be free again, to go where they pleased. Then they saw on the sands the huge wooden horse. They gathered round it in astonishment, for it was indeed a wonderful piece of work. Trojans opened their gates happily, but they were surprised after seeing a huge wooden horse on the sand. They were observing it with a great curiosity, for it was a wonderful piece of work. As they were wondering how the horse had been built and why it had been left behind, they found a Greek with his hands tied together lying under it. When the Trojans dragged him out, the man pretended to be very frightened of them. When he was commanded to tell them why the Greeks had gone and why they had left this horse behind, he pretended to tremble very much and refuse to speak. When at last they threatened to kill him, he spoke and told them this false tale. While observing that wooden horse, Trojans found a man who pretended to be frightened. Trojans forced him to tell the truth. That Greek man told a false story. What was that story? Let's see. The Greeks are tired of the long war and have sailed away in their ships, he said. But they are afraid of the long voyage, journey, home too. And so they have made this horse and left it as an offering to the god of the sea. They wanted also to kill me and offer me as a sacrifice to the sea god, but I escaped and hid from them. He told that Greeks were tired of war, but they were afraid of return journey. So they had made that wooden horse and offered to sea god to keep them safe. They also wanted to kill that man as an offering to God. It is a token of sacrifice. However, that person, that Greek man, ran away from them. But why did the Greeks make such a huge horse? Some of the Trojans asked. Yes, their question was correct. And the cunning Greek made this reply. If they had made a smaller offering, you might have taken it into your city. Then the luck would have gone to the Trojans and not to the Greeks. That's why they made it too big to go inside your gates. Then Trojans asked why Greeks made such a huge horse. Then Greek man replied that if Greeks made a small horse, then Trojans would take that small horse to their city, certainly. And good luck also would have gone with that horse. So they made it too big to go inside. The Trojans were delighted to hear this. The Greeks have gone, they said, and the walls are no longer necessary. Let's make a hole in the wall and drag the horse in. Trojans were happy to hear this. They thought that war was over, so walls are not necessary. They could make a hole in the wall to drag in that horse. Their wise priest warned them not to do so. It may be a trick that will ruin us. He said, you will bring disaster on the city if you break down the walls. But they were so excited that they paid no attention to his words. They broke down part of their strong wall in order to drag the horse in. The wise priest advised Trojans not to do so. It could bring ruin for Trojans. But Trojans were so excited that they did not pay attention to his warning. And Trojans broke down the part of that strong wall and brought horse in. All that day, Trojans feasted and drank and celebrated. After all their celebrations, they went to sleep and slept soundly. But that day of rejoicing was soon followed by a night of terror and death. Trojans celebrated their victory and slept without tension at night. Their happiness was followed with terror at night. See what happened. We will see. The Greek ships had not sailed far. As soon as they were hidden by an island, they had lowered their sails and dropped anchor and waited for the night. In the darkness, the fleet sailed back, and the leading ship, which was Agamemnon's, bore a red light high on its mast. The Greek who was watching for the return of the fleet crept to the wooden horse and gave the signal. The side of the horse opened. The Greeks climbed out and opened the gates. The whole Greek army entered the sleeping city. Immediately, the Greeks set fire to houses and towers and palaces and began to burn and kill. According to plan, Greeks were hidden by an island. All ships returned back, and signal was given. The gate of that horse was open. Greeks came out and opened the gates, and the whole Greek army entered the sleeping city. Immediately, Greeks began to burn the houses. A bright light lit up the night sky as palaces and houses, temples, and whatever, and towers also went up in flames. The Trojans fought as well as they could, but it was all in vain. Old King Priam was killed with all his brave sons. Hector's wife and his old mother and sister were carried off as slaves by the conquerors. Their fate was in contrast to Helen's when King Menelaus rushed through the city, looking for her and found her in her palace. She hung her head in shame and sorrow as she faced her former husband. Her voice was choked with emotion and she could not speak. But Menelaus forgave her and she went back with him. For it was only Aphrodite who had turned her heart away from her home and her husband and her child. Troy was filled with frightening shouts, weeping, noise of weapons. Unfortunately, Trojans were killed. When morning came, nothing was left of the proud, rich city that had resisted attack for 10 years. The old and epic city of Troy was burned to the ground just because of a wise trick. Okay, we will stop here. I hope you must have understood this lesson. Bye, everybody.